GM. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Kadena Campfire. Just a reminder, this is a Kadena and community-driven initiative where we get to share all the exciting news happening in and around Kadena. My name is Ryan, and if you haven't noticed, I'm extra excited this morning. There's a reason. I am always excited. I'm very passionate about things. But we have an incredible lineup of guests joining us today. They are literally the who's who of blockchain. We also, just to go with that, have some super exciting announcements to share. Some of them may have been sort of kind of leaked yesterday, but we're going to share some exciting news with you all. First up, joining me on stage is our very own CEO and co-founder, Stuart Popejoy, who I'm not only honored to work for, but I get to share in his excitement, in his vision, and in his masteries day in, day out. Now, my next two guests, you may just have heard of, since they are the two most cited authors of the 2008 Bitcoin white paper. We finally have Stuart Haber and Scott Stornetta joining us on the stage, and I know just how excited the community has been. They've been asking for this for so long. We really are going to have some of the biggest brains, some of the biggest visionaries, and some exciting and enjoyable conversations today. But just when you thought it couldn't get any better, let me show you something super, super exciting. Yes, that's right. We finally have Marmalade V2 live on mainnet. And talk about incredible timing, because Stuart Haber and Scott are going to be sharing with us some interesting and exciting information about their NFT project that will be launching very soon on Kadena. Now, without further ado, let me welcome you all to our esteemed guests. Hey, Stuart.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Stuart.
Hello, Stuart and Ryan. And Scott.
Hey, Scott. We have the dream team. I am honored. I cannot tell you. I love spending as much time as I can with legends of this space. I've been really, really fortunate to actually spend quite a bit of time with Stuart Haber and Scott recently, probably over the last, I don't know, it feels like 2 months. We get to share visions. We get to share information about the industry. We get to talk about all things blockchain, and I get to learn a lot. It is fantastic. So welcome. I guess the community wants to know a lot about your background, your history, your vision, where this all came from, the start of the first blockchain. So why don't we kick off Stuart Haber? This is going to be really interesting, having two Stuarts on stage. But Stuart Haber, why don't you kick off giving us a bit of a background?
Okay. First, Ryan, thanks a lot for saving Scott and me the coin flip that we sometimes, or rock, paper, scissors that we have to do sometimes when we're both.
Is Stuart at a loss for words?
Telling a story. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, loud and clear.
So the blockchain story begins when quite a few years ago, Scott and I were two young researchers at Bell Communications Research, then the almost brand new Bell Labs of the local phone companies when Ma Bell was broken up in the the mid 80s. Maybe some people, surely some people in your audience weren't even born yet, but I was. You were born, Stuart. Yes. Okay. So I'd been at Bellcore a couple of years. I was a cryptographer, young, beginning my research career, and Scott arrived there a couple of years later, and first of all, I should say that the atmosphere around us at Bellcore was very much in the spirit of the legendary Bell Labs. For those who wanted to make some room for themselves, we could work on practically anything we wanted within reason. So Scott knocked at my door right after arriving and said, "Now I've got a problem that I think cryptography might help solve. Let me tell you about it." And I said, "Sure." The problem was how to ensure the integrity of digital records. Remember, this was, well, I haven't said it yet. This was 1989. Nobody carried around powerful computers in their pocket like this. I won't tell you what was sitting on my desk at the time at Bellcore, but it was clear the entire world was going online soon, and Scott first, and then the two of us were completely worried about the future of records of all kinds. All records were becoming digital, and a bit string is just a bit string. How can you be sure that it hasn't changed? How can you be sure of ownership of it? All sorts of questions like that. So I don't know. That's Scott. Why don't you pick up from there, and we'll go.
Before you do, I have to ask Stuart Haber. You have something that you love doing on any kind of video, any kind of show, and you shared with me this morning.
Wait for it. It's not quite the right point in the story.
Beautiful. I cannot wait, and I know the audience is going to appreciate that. So perfect. Why don't we hand over to you, Scott?
Sure. Again, it's the same facts that Stuart described, but I have a bit of the sky is falling C-3PO style mentality, and my view was, as a result, a little more dramatic. Namely, society is built on the records that it keeps. And if we can no longer trust the records as the baseline foundation, the whole thing's going to crumble. And I don't know whether it was some deficiency in my childhood or what, but for me, I always pictured myself in thinking about this problem as, somebody needs to stick their finger in the dike or the whole thing's going to collapse. So
I think Satoshi has a similar kind of temperament.
Yeah,
I couldn't say.
I'm just saying, there's a tone in the Bitcoin white paper of,
right.
kind of like, post 2000. I mean, that's more focused on 2008 great financial crisis and stuff like that. But, it is like somebody has to do something.
Right.
Absolutely. So let's try this. So Stuart P, this is going to be real hard. How did you and Stuart originally meet? I'm sure there's a wonderful story behind this.
That's a fun one. It was actually, thanks to us being in New York, which is a little unusual for a crypto company. And I went to a Bitcoin meetup, and the topic of discussion was various things surrounding Ethereum, including at the time, I think it was early 2017. And at the time, there was a huge denial of service attack on Ethereum that had happened relatively shortly beforehand. So there was a big discussion about things in Ethereum and kind of smart contract security and stuff like that at this meetup. And that's where Stuart and I met, because there was kind of similar themes that we were both interested in there. But really, we just started talking, and I told him about Pact, and we just found that there was a lot we had to talk about. I was, of course, completely blown away to meet Stuart. It's just, we had founded in 2016, and here we were talking to one of the people who had really made blockchain happen from the very start. And I think the thing that most impressed me then was that in the Bitcoin white paper, they talk about you can do, the idea that you can do this kind of, the Haber Stornetta hashing of, the way to make this, irrefutable chain of documents or records, but you'd need something like a New York Times classifieds or something. You'd need something, some kind of centralized authority in which to publish it in. And this was a problem he was trying to solve. And when you read that, you think he's making an analogy, like, oh, ha, 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 right. Yeah, like we'd all go publish this. And, so, so anyways, it was just very interesting to find out later on that there's more to that story in terms of what Stuart and Scott had developed and how they really had started blockchain well before Satoshi even steps on the scene. So that was just obviously blew my mind to pieces. And ever since then, Stuart collaborated with us on the Chainweb paper. I'm wearing the original Chainweb shirt. So Stuart's been a big help. And then I got to know Scott as they started talking to me about Immutable Record, which is just an incredibly interesting and exciting NFT project. So I'm a tech guy. I'm a nerd. So getting to chat with these guys is a dream come true for sure.
I always say I always feel like the biggest nerd burger, but I love sharing with super smart people out there. So that's a great segue into Immutable Record, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later on. I would love to dive deeper into the history. So both Stuart and Scott, authors, or at least cited authors of the 2008 Bitcoin white paper. I would love to hear from you guys, your visions as they were then, what you contributed then, how that translates to what we see today. Of course, the age-old question of we've seen a lot of the birth of proof-of-stake networks, but we know a lot of the fundamentals, we understand the security implications and whatever else. Would love to hear from you two around why proof of work, where you see this going. Do we see proof of work continuing its trajectory, and how that competes, I guess, with proof of stake?
Oh, I'd say I'll jump in first and just say the Satoshi in putting together the Bitcoin system made this great innovation of taking the data structure that Scott and I put together for what we now call the first blockchain, or maybe Proto-Blockchain, but we were actually running a service for ensuring the integrity of digital records that was exactly the single chain data structure that Satoshi chose for Bitcoin, to which Satoshi added the mining mechanism, proof of work, as an incentive to keep things going, and that was a wonderful new way of approaching the problem of
right. So Stuart, how did you guys solve that problem?
It's wonderful to have a straight man who even knows how to spell Stuart correctly, that is. So we were at Bellcore, Bell Communications Research, but we somehow, as two young guys, convinced management to let us spin out a company to commercialize this service. What we called it, perhaps a less than catchy name, but we were offering digital timestamping services, and the company was called Surety, S-U-R-E-T-Y, which is a fine old English word for assurance. So we got timestamping requests from customers, grouped them into blocks, built Merkle trees, linked the trees in a chain of blocks that we never used. We might have used the word chain. Did we, Scott? I'm not sure. we certainly didn't use the word blocks. And we had the problem of achieving, using current language, worldwide consensus on these hash values. How do we do that? And remember, this was, the service was launched commercially in '95, but we had experimental code running at Belcore already that was launched. What day is today? It was 32 years and about a week ago.
Wow.
We launched the service, and once a week we would take the block hashes, build a numerical tree, and put the root of that numerical tree in a small classified ad in the New York Times. So I have here the New York Times on paper, as delivered to my apartment in New York 3 days ago. And
Thankfully, your address was glared out there.
yeah, well, that's good. We got reflected sunlight to mess up. So here we go on page 9 of the New York edition. Though this is still published in the national edition of the New York Times. So right here, oops, where's my webcam? There we go. There you see circled. Sorry, mirror image thing. There we go.
Okay, there you go.
There's a classified ad with a hash value in it. Actually, 2 hash values, but that's a different story. Every bit of which depends on every timestamping request received by surety servers since it was Belcore's server, a Belcore server running the code in October 1991 was the
Genesis.
I think rightfully called the Genesis block of the first blockchain, and it's still running. Go out and buy the paper next Sunday, and you can see it's still running.
That is phenomenal. I would love to know. So, interesting statistics. We launched a tweet about this upcoming campfire. We had, just before this actual campfire went live today, we had about 250,000 views. I would love to see how many New York Times editions get purchased today on the back of that, just to keep a record of history. I mean, I never knew that. I certainly didn't know that was always in there. That's incredible.
Satoshi did know it, because Satoshi, when introducing the use of our mechanism in the white paper, talks about making hash values public. Though the example he or she or they chose was not the New York Times, but I believe they mentioned Net News. But it's the same. It's the same
that
idea.
wide publication issue definitely surfaces in his thought thread. I think that if I were to add any color to what Stuart said, it's that we spent a lot of time not just thinking about the mathematical mechanisms, but about what I call the social embedding. And one of my sons is majored in economics, and he used to sum up economics in 2 words. He said, incentives matter.
Yeah.
And getting the incentives right was something that we understood from the get-go was going to be crucial for this to get socially embedded.
Yeah.
And so a little known fact, or an even lesser known fact than the New York Times publications, is that in the original system, anyone that posted to the chain was in effect a kind of validation node as well. And that in principle, we could validate any claim against the records and receipts that those that participated in the system held. But we viewed it as so small scale at the time that we needed something much bigger to sort of cement the thing and get the ball rolling. And that's kind of how we viewed the New York Times as a sort of, super validation node. But I can remember, for example, talking with Mitch Kapor of the Electronic Frontier Foundation when he was on the board about having the EFF serve as a validation node and trying to get other online players serve as validation nodes as well. It's just that it's just hard to imagine how primitive things were in terms of available bandwidth, available compute power, and available storage. For example, if we had gone to our managers at the time and said, we've figured out how to manage all the world's financial transactions in a purely decentralized way, only one small problem. We're going to need tens of thousands of nodes that can hold several hundred gigabytes, if not terabytes of data. They would have looked at us saying, that's like trying to get up on stilts in a plan to reach the moon. It's totally impractical.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we were so constrained by bandwidth and storage issues that really all you see appearing in the Times are just those root hashes, a kind of bare backbone of what the richer blockchain could be. But we had such storage and bandwidth constraints, we couldn't do it any other way.
Yeah, amazing. What an interesting story. And to think that this was 30, I think you just said 32 years ago, right? So way before, I mean, for many, that was even before access to home internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, in fact, it certainly was before home internet. I think home internet was around 94, right?
And the World Wide Web didn't exist yet. The internet certainly did, but the web came a couple of years later.
There you go. That's incredible. So I have a question, somewhat loaded, and I'm hoping that we'll get input from pretty much everybody on this call. So that is the focus around proof of work, focus around the blockchains and whatever else. You've obviously spent quite a lot of time engaged with Kadena, speaking with Kadena, understanding our platform, understanding our go-to-market, our value prop, the benefits that we have behind it. Would love to hear your thoughts on Kadena of today, Kadena of tomorrow, why you like or why you have this somewhat admiration for Kadena as a blockchain.
I'm happy to start that one.
Yeah, love to. Thanks.
Again, I know we talk about proof of work or this or that aspect, but the first thing I would say is it's just the overall level of professionalism and attention to detail and the rigor and the seriousness and the sort of discipline that we saw, that I'm just speaking personally, displayed. The whole notion that they were sweating all the details, trying to make the efficiency of proof of work, not just better, but optimal, trying to get the smart contract language to do just what it needed to do and no more, so that the security of that was implicit from the beginning, not going out there and trying to promote with hype, but rather, a disciplined long-term plan to be able to scale and handle the volume in a professional way. All of that was impressive to me. So it's not just the particular choices, it's the whole methodology of making the right choices and optimizing the system. That's what inspired confidence in me.
I love that. The holistic approach, it's more than just solving a particular problem. It's looking at everything from, as they say, soup to nuts, beginning to end, understanding how we're going to do this, why we're going to do this, not overcomplicate it, but of course, build a scalable, composable platform. Anything you want to add, Stuart Haber?
What? So Scott has mentioned both the both Chainweb and Pact, the language. I should say that so as Stuart said, we'd met at a Bitcoin meetup in New York and started talking and said we should get together. So I went all the way from Manhattan to Brooklyn to meet Stuart in at his small office, and he said, we've been thinking about this data structure problem. And so they the team, which was then Stuart and Monica and Will, of course, were, I believe, at that point still working out exactly how you modeled what you were going to do. So it was all their idea, but I helped them find the vocabulary in the mathematical computer science literature for their wonderful data structure that you guys call Chainweb, which I didn't. It seemed like it would. There it is. That's a T-shirt version of a very nice picture if you like mathematical diagrams.
This is well, that's 7 chains. Oh no, that's the propagation of 10 chains, right? It's the propagation of 10 chains over 7 blocks where the time horizon is in the middle. So, the block you're looking at is in the middle, and the idea is that as you go backwards, you're securing chains. 3 blocks backwards, you've secured all 10 chains. And I forgot what forward means. That's, we need Will on the call to remind me what it.
Right.
Well, I'm the brains behind Pact. Will was the brains behind Chainweb. So, there's some light cone physics analogies in there that.
And in any case, in that first conversation, I mean, we were talking about the data structure, but I also started. Ethereum was going strong and had a community. We were, as you said, this meetup in Manhattan had been about a denial of service trouble that Ethereum was having. And I'm not a programming languages guy at all, but I was just amazed to hear Stuart describe the Pact language, which by then was viewed. More than formulated, it was you had code I was blown away by your work in ensuring its safety and your conscious choice of not being Turing complete.
Which, by the way, is directly descendant from Bitcoin script, right? I mean, that was the previous example, and for similar reasons. The reason for Turing incompleteness is, this is a system that's supposed to provide the highest possible level of security. That's one of the first things that you can eliminate to enhance security, and many things come from that. So that's just one of the things that we stand on the shoulders of your work, but also the work of Team Satoshi or whatever, in the sense that they extended your work. And I think what Scott said about the social element is really important there, because Bitcoin was designed to have smart contracts as well, and it didn't work out that way, I think, largely because of security mitigations. But the smart contracts idea is in there in Bitcoin, and it's in there in a lot of the work from everybody in that field at that time. Adam Back, there was a lot of stuff going on secure languages, I forgot the author of that, but so that's where I think some of this idea of the social element also comes in. It's not just, Bitcoin obviously brought more people to the party, so it solved that problem as well. But it's also this idea that, and that's why Pact is, one of the reasons why Pact is interpreted, that it's, that the code you write is the code that goes on chain, is so that regular humans could be directly involved in the process of, kind of negotiating what kinds of agreements we're making with each other. And then those become the record that goes onto the blockchain. I mean, I feel like this is a continuum, that this is something that comes right from the beginning of your guys' research, which is, this kind of continual process where we try to, basically give something to society that allows, everybody, not just computer nerds, not just people who want to speculate on coins, not just everybody, the ability to, and not just lawyers, not just people who want to deal with documents, right? Nothing wrong with lawyers, but it's not just it's not just documents either. It's human interaction. It's all the ways that humans interact with each other and want to come to agreements. Being able to make that something that everybody can access and safely use. And, and honestly, even scalability enters into that, because I would say the biggest flaw with Bitcoin is that it's not scalable. Yep. So that it starts, you start having to pay more, and that's a way of cutting people out.
And I really do want to go back to that social embeddedness thread that Stuart P just picked up on. And that is, people, talk about each subsequent revolution. Well, this is going to change everything. Oh, well, this new thing is going to change everything. This new thing is going to change everything. But if you look for a common thread over the last, let's say, 75 years, what we're seeing is increasing connectivity between people and increasing compute power to mediate the interactions between people. And Stuart talking about the human readable contract really just goes to the point. It's still the sources and sinks of the economic machine that is the world's economy. It starts with people and it ends with people. And what we're doing is we're coming up with better ways to add more compute power and more connectivity in managing the relationships among people. And that's why, yes, it's great when people declare this or that mathematical proof of something, but until you talk about how this is actually going to affect one person interacting with another person, then it just doesn't get cashed out into having impact. And, back to my earlier theme about what so impressed me was just that Kadena was trying to think the whole thing through.
I'll say one more thing about the social connection, social impact. That, in fact, goes back to the very beginning of Scott's and my thinking about about what we call the digital timestamping problem, that is, ensuring the integrity of digital records. Cryptographic tools that were available, all the world's records.
That's the drama queen in me,
Yeah. Well, all the world's digital records. Let's be modest. But when we were trying to solve the problem, we wanted to solve it in a way that did not rely on trusting a central entity, a single entity of any kind. Cryptographic hashing and public key methods were already there. So having a trusted entity be the integrity agent for the world was a fairly straightforward solution, but that we found that enormously unsatisfying, because we wanted to do this without trusting any agent, and in fact, without trusting any mathematical or computational assumptions. Also, we wanted to trust as little as possible. And it took us a while to come up with a solution that worked. And in fact, we were at a loss. And then, being in the sort of technical surroundings that we said, well, maybe we're having trouble solving this problem because it cannot be solved. And we were trying to, in fact, prove that in a proper setting, the problem could not be solved. That is, you couldn't ensure the integrity of the world's records without having somebody in charge of things, somebody, some entity. And it wasn't until it took a step back. So to prove something impossible is hard. The only way to do it, to approach the question, is to think carefully about modeling what operations are possible. And when we took a step back and realized that attaching time to a string of bits is in fact a social process. And we had to get society, people involved. Now, of course, this sounds great in retrospect, but in fact, that was our mental process that ended up with the Proto-Blockchain.
Love it. This is beyond interesting. I mean, every single time I speak to you guys, I pick up on some alpha, some nuggets, and I learn something. I need to shift gears here for a second. We've hinted about your project, Immutable Record. You haven't shared any information yet on this space. I am super excited for you to share that with the community and with all those listening. So I don't know if Scott or Stuart, one of you want to kick that off, but I know I've spent enough time with both of you learning about this project, which I am pumped about. Go for it. Floor is yours.
Scott, go.
Well, again, when I say all the world's records, we really thought of it that way. We felt that we had, in a combination of bravado and modesty, ushered in a new era where, starting on October 13th of 1991, we were operating a system where we could prove the integrity of any records that were operated on. And so our weekly coalescing of things into an ad in the New York Times was using what was then widely understood as the paper of record to create the one universal, record of the world's events. And so what we're doing to commemorate that is we're beginning with a collection of 12 consecutive weeks of those hash roots being published in the Times. And we're taking a sometimes serious and sometimes whimsical view of the events that occurred within that block. And then we have an artist that has chosen to illustrate one singular event that occurred during that recorded week of history. And then for the next week, another event. And what we're really trying to say is this is now the universal record. This is where you can know with certainty that events occurred, that they occurred, at the stated time. And here were the sort of first person accounts of what happened. And they're all now registered on not the paper of record, but on the blockchain of record. And so each of the NFTs commemorates some representative event that occurred during that week's block.
And I might add that we're not starting with the very first block. We're starting with the second week of January 1992, because that Sunday, January, whatever date
12,
it was,
I think.
January 12th, 1992, there was an article in the business section of the New York Times, which was probably the first mainstream press description of our work. So an article by the great New York Times tech and science reporter John Markoff. And so those 12, so that week and the 11 following weeks are the dozen New York Times ads in series that are our first NFT offering, one by one, on the Kadena blockchain, more specifically on the just announced Marmalade version 2.
Again, you can probably gather that Stuart and I like things that are recursive or meta because we're getting the entries from the paper of record, and then this was the first mainstream announcement of the system authored by the science and tech editor of record in that, and so it's a great kickoff moment, and captures, nostalgia as well as the primitive but still sort of path-breaking technology.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing behind this too is this is not just an NFT for NFT's sake. It's not an NFT for some kind of digitally created piece of artwork. This is genuinely a piece of history. This is marking moments in history from the time the original blockchain came to life from YouTube. So a very different take on using NFTs, why you use the NFTs. I'll share also with the audience in a bit some of the offerings that we have for anybody that ends up minting your NFTs and what we have to show. Talk us through timelines. When do you expect Immutable Record to go live?
Well, the first thing I would note is that we sealed up the records that are part of this collection on the anniversary date of the Genesis block, okay? And it was 32 years prior. And of course, 32 to a non-computer nerd seems like just a random number, but it's a nice round number for computer nerds. It's just 10000. Okay, it's the 2 to the 5th year since it began, and we are now preparing for the actual auction coming up within the next 3 weeks.
I think we have a date, right?
We do, but I'll leave Stuart for the punchline.
Okay, that date is, I believe, November 15th. So
it is.
And that is, I believe, a Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday, 11:15. We're going to use that as a code as well. I'll get a few more details before we announce that. It'll be in date format, so 11/15. Stuart and I did have a funny conversation about this as to how you pronounce the date, depending on which part of the world you're in. But there is no 15/11, so it's definitely 11:15. We're safe. Also, where can people go to check out the actual project itself? I have the link if you want me to share that. Otherwise,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's nft.immutablerecord.net. Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for posting that up there. Check it out. I believe it's a placeholder for now. It may be live shortly, and then people will be able to go there and actually mint on the day. I would actually like to dive a little bit deeper into the tech, and our Stuart Popejoy can add to this, of course. Why Marmalade? I know the answer to the question, but I want to hear it from the experts on this panel. Like, why Marmalade? There's a lot of standards out there. There's a lot of ways of doing things and interacting with the blockchain. There's a lot of ways of storing immutable record or immutable records as such on the blockchain. What is so fascinating about Marmalade?
So Marmalade, for one thing, is built on Pact, and I didn't want to be offering an NFT without having some confidence that there wouldn't be some terrible bug discovered right afterwards, I mean, looking like fools.
Right.
I mean, Scott and me looking like fools. I was when Scott and I first started thinking about doing some sort of NFT project, marking our place in the history of blockchain work. I was completely astounded by the fact that NFTs, as usually practiced, did not even didn't have anything to do with ensuring the integrity of the bits in the digital offering. I just found that
it boggles the mind.
Astonishing. And then when I started talking to Stuart about the technical details, and I realized that Pact enabled all sorts of besides putting into the smart contract for the NFT offering the standard practice of royalties to creators and so on, which also isn't done in standard NFT practice in anything like a reasonable way. Marmalade does. Even Marmalade version 1 was pretty good.
Yeah, again, there are features in Marmalade and the underlying language that appeal to us both for the getting it right nature, but also this initial collection that we're offering has some latent capabilities that we won't be announcing yet, but that it paves the way for future collections to turn on some additional features that we think could really turn the NFT marketplace itself on its head. And I know that I'm, again, playing that drama card, but stay tuned. We're going to do, for those that, the winning bidders of the collection of 12, we're going to have an AMA, a private AMA, where we're going to disclose 2 additional things that we think can be revolutionary is an overused word, but significant in the advancement of the NFT space, as well as in the advancement back all the way back to Stuart Popejoy's thing about thinking about people, advancing the self-sovereign identity of people and their claims and credentials. I know that's a mouthful, but it's a teaser for what will be unique about this NFT and how it ties into 2 future projects that we'll provide more details with later.
So you released, and I don't know if everybody on this stream actually caught this. And actually, before I even say that,
there's a lot to unpack there, and I apologize for being a little obscure.
We could probably unpack for hours behind this. I want to clarify something I said originally, and that is the actual NFT collection is going to be a bid. It's a bidding system. It's not going to be an actual mint. You're going to be bidding. 2, you shared the fact that any of the NFT holders will actually get the opportunity to have a private AMA with you 2, getting some real alpha about what's coming next. So, of course, you don't want to share that now. I love teasing that out. That gives us opportunity for another episode, which is fantastic. But, of course, like what you did, I seem to liken this to what you did with the original blockchain. There are iterations as we grow. Clearly, you've got a vision for what you're going to be doing with the NFTs, with Marmalade, onboarding and using a lot of the technology and the skills and capabilities that we have built into Pact and the like. Super excited for that. Bear in mind also, The actual bidding, it's going to be an auction. It's going to be super fun. It will be going live 11/15. I will keep reiterating that date because that's going to become a very important date. I think, like the other three wonderful guests on this panel, I love numbers, so I will not forget 11/15. I have a question for all three of you, actually, and that is, we've seen the launch of Marmalade V2 today. I guess it kind of got snuck out yesterday, but officially today, and we're super excited about that. We've spoken about the storage of immutable records on the blockchain, so any type of immutable records. Where do you see NFTs going? So the industry keeps talking about this. 95% of NFTs are dead. We understand that. We're talking about PFP projects and whatever else. That's whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that first, and then
Please.
Stuart come back, clean up, and fix my mistakes. I think NFTs are very much the harbinger of a massive move to put assets on chain for record. I know that many are dismissive of the Bored Apes and their collapse or whatnot, but I think people just are not grasping that we're still in the early innings of this blockchain game, and that decentralization really is about spreading the trust so broadly that individuals can act with full agency, without a dependence on not just a trusted authority in a cryptographic sense, but relying on governments to issue them credentials to say that you're a person. We were people before there were governments, and that's why I gravitate back to this thing I mentioned in passing, this notion of creating and claiming our own self-sovereign identities, I think, is at the heart of what is possible with a decentralized universal ledger. And so I see NFTs very much as just the initial foray into creating these items of value that we can claim clear authorship to. And I think you're just going to see the movement of much, much more of what we would call an NFT today, much more of both real assets as well as real claimed attributes of people. Effectively, we're each going to become our own individual NFT that can engage in this virtual marketplace with a kind of API for interaction between humans.
One thing I just want to jump in and say there is that is just how many threads in the Immutable Record project are just so closely line up with our vision at Kadena. We haven't talked about it much, but internally we have this vision that is guiding everything we do, which is, giving every human the tools to build their own internet. That's the vision we have. And the stuff Scott was just saying, I couldn't line up closer with that. And the other thing I want to say is it's not just spiritual. It's also, the work that Stuart did with the Marmalade team, going back quite a ways now, so that Jermaine and Danila, who are the team members who are really putting in all the commits and doing the hard work of building the V2 standard. Stuart started working with them, I think it's a year and a half ago or something. Like it's a long time. And so, some of the work on some of the ideas that Scott and Stuart were coming up with were really fundamental to how we improved Marmalade for V2. So, so this is a collaboration going on here. And it's just one of the things that, makes me, that I'm very grateful for, that we're able to work with, people who have the big picture in mind at all times. Because, a lot of people say things are early for crypto, And a lot of times it's an excuse. It's like, oh, well, it's early. That's why, we just lost $600 million. That excuse doesn't check out, actually. There's actually very little reason why certain aspects of this technology should be so immature at this time. But if anybody can say that, it's these guys, because they started this in 1991. If they say it's early, okay, it's early, and I have to agree, because again, the problem we're trying to solve, and this comes right into Marmalade, is how do you how do you make it that humans can interact with each other, have control over the whole process, have visibility into the whole process, and then even be able to bring their own kinds of marketplaces and auctions and ideas about things to the market so that other people can benefit from them. That enters directly into the idea of customizable policies. And again, immutable record, the policy that Stuart was working on, was one of the first detailed policies we really ever got, put into code. So I'm going on and on, but I just want to say that this partnership is more than just immutable records selecting a vendor and being like, okay, this has got the features we need. It's also that, we're happy, of course, to be working with Immutable Record on this, but like Immutable Record has worked very closely with Kadena and has given back to Kadena in terms of, understanding how big this vision is and what a long road we have ahead of us to realize some of the things Scott's talking about. These things are hard to get right. Yes, Pact is a safe language, but you still have to decide what you're going to do with it, and you have to make the right choices there. And these are not easy things to do. I do want to commend the Marmalade team as well for also working with the incredible Kadena builder community on all of the things that went into V2. So, the amount of community work, the level of thinking going on here is really humbling for me to see. When I started on Marmalade, that's almost 3 years ago now. I really didn't foresee it becoming this incredible and this have as many ways that it goes out into all the things Scott has been talking about. So it's very satisfying for me to see this launching today.
I really wish that, like other platforms, we had emojis that we could throw up, because I would have thrown up the 100 emoji at least 20 times today. Community, our vision, our strategy, working with Scott and Stuart Haber has been absolutely phenomenal. I think it is absolutely not a one-way relationship. This is a wonderful partnership. We're very proud and excited to have you building on Kadena with Marmalade V2. And in return, we are honored to be working alongside you guys. Before we wrap up today, let me just share that link again, nft.immutablerecord.net, 11/15. If you thought today's campfire was exciting, if you thought today's campfire had incredible talent up on stage, you're not wrong. There's that 100 emoji again. But wait for 11/15. We have something in the works. We have something very exciting that will be happening on 11/15. So I will say, hold my espresso. That's probably the safest way of saying it. Also, just to remind everybody, please make sure to follow Kadena on all socials, on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, YouTube. We appreciate everybody here today. We are super excited to have Scott Stornetta, Stuart Haber, and of course, Stuart Popejoy. I love spending time with you. I have one last pressing question I have to ask Scott and Stuart, and you're going to hate me asking this. Are you Satoshi?
I'll let Scott answer in one of his several styles.
Well, again, I first heard about the Bitcoin white paper because I started receiving unsolicited emails and US mails saying, gee, I see that you're your work is half the footnotes in the Bitcoin white paper. I also Googled you and see that you speak Japanese. And so just, why not just come out with it and tell us once and for all what the situation is? And I always give the same answer, which is as clear as I know how to say it, which is, Watashi wa Satoshi Nakamoto de wa arimasen. Demo Satoshi dattara sonna koto o kokuwaku suru to omoimasu ka? I don't know how to say it more clearly than that, and I hope that settles the issue for.
Well, I had live streaming Google Translate go, and all I saw was yes. Am I wrong? Or am I right?
That's a hallucination of the large language
of the translator and whatever espresso I poured this morning. Well, Stuart Popejoy, Scott, Stuart Haber, been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Really, I know the community has absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this. I've been looking at some of the comments on the side. Would love to have you back again at some point. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to the launch of Immutable Record.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
thanks, Ryan, for a great campfire.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
So long.
Bye.